15th. We are anticipating Councilmember Garcetti, and hopefully he'll be able to make it, but I believe he's on his way, and Councilman Weezar, so I'm assuming he'll be here as well. But let's begin, because time will pass us by, and next thing you know, it'll be too late. So on the first item, I do want to thank Dr. Paul Ong from the UCLA School of Public Policy, but I believe they'll be making their presentation in July, so we're looking forward to that. They have a presentation, Rediscovering the Urban River, Los Angeles and Beyond, so it'd be great to hear what the students are seeing and hearing that presentation. And you'll find that what we're going to be trying to do as committee is actually, I just want to take a step back for a second. We're going to do our best to move into the implementation phase of the river plan. So with all of your hard work, with our engineer, Mr. Gary Moore, and the other folks from the various departments in Public Works, Bureau of Sanitation, and Department of Water and Power, we've been able to get to a place where we have something tangible to work with. I was in Washington, D.C. past couple of months, and I think the line forming from the White House goes around the White House several blocks. So when it comes to infusion of dollars, so our posture should be how we become ready for these funds. And that's going to take a little bit more work, working with the various departments, understanding what it takes to implement this plan. It's complex because we are dealing with a very sophisticated urban core with a watershed that is, again, multi-jurisdictional. So how this river will behave is going to be dependent on how we can coordinate and collaborate with these different jurisdictions. So what you'll be hearing is it will be the type of information that begins to strengthen this urban fabric as we challenge the cultures in our own city family, within the county, within the state, and the federal government, and how we can actually create a focal point and actually move in a manner in which we can see real results. I am always inspired by what other cities have done, and it's taken them some time, like it's taking us. But I believe we have the strong leadership at the department level to make it happen. And I believe we have a kind of vision from various elected officials from different jurisdictions to make this happen. So today's meeting will be about the various actions being taken to take the necessary steps to culminate in some real activity within the river corridor, within the river itself, and that's what we want to see. So that being said, we can begin the presentation, item number 2. If you can just read that into the record, Madam Clerk. Or we have our CLA. He showed up. All right. Good to see you.
Good afternoon, Council Member.
Thank you for joining us.
Not a problem. Rafael Operator with the CLA's office. Item number 2 is a Bureau Engineering status report relative to the establishment of the LA River Special Projects Office and City Planning Department progress report on the implementation of the LA River Revitalization Master Plan.
Great. Before we begin, Mr. Moore, can we call Councilman Wizar's office to make sure whether we should expect him or not? That would be good. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Councilman Reyes. It's great to be here. These are great meetings, and I appreciate your leadership on these. Some great news with the county partnership. On March 31st, the Board of Supervisors approved the River Memorandum of Understanding that this City Council had previously approved, and I think it's really another great moment in the part of implementation, the commitment of the city and the county working together. I think it goes, as you mentioned, with your leadership on the trip to meet with officials in Washington, D.C. on April 27th with the Army Corps of Engineers and the county and the city all making presentations, because we know it's a united front that we have to do to show, and we know we believe in it and we're doing it. Right. So thanks to your leadership on that also. And we continue to work with the county on now actually coming up with a master maintenance agreement. We're making progress on that, and our next meeting with the county will be on June 24th. As you talked about implementation, a reality is financial resources. And we continue to work with the congressional delegation to encourage appropriation of funds. It would be through the Army Corps for the upcoming Water Resources Development Act, also known as WRDA, and for a demonstration project. And with that, the city will be looking at, if that funding is appropriate, a 35% match is asked from the local sponsors. So we're just letting you know and that it is, we're working hard with you and everybody else, and so we would need to have some local funds. With the state freeing up some of the bond money, North Atwater Park and Sunny Nook, the council approved a motion for those projects, and we're looking to start the bidding on the Sunny Nook River Park. So that's in Councilman Labange's district.
That's great.
Just a couple other things. Outreach, and it's so important that the community continues to know about this project. And we had a great presentation from the Deputy Mayor of Seoul on the Cheonggye-cheong River. And thanks again for being there. And I think that was a lot of fun between planning and Bureau of Engineering. We really enjoyed sponsoring that talk. And once again, I think there was a tremendous outreach with that, in that the Korean press really covered that, and it was on several of the TV stations and both of the newspapers. So once again, celebrating the river and knowing the potentials for the Los Angeles River. Two last things. This coming Thursday, something important for the river is a special meeting of the Citizens Oversight Advisory Committee for Proposition O, the pollution bond that we have here in the city. It's very important for us to be working with them on implementation, another potential funding source. So I know I'll be joining you on a tour with them. And once again, we want to really highlight the possibilities of Taylor Yard. It's such a centerpiece of what we can do in transforming this river. So we're very excited about that.
Well, 2 points. First, I want to thank you for your hard work, but it's amazing to me how with the political will, you can actually take out a freeway and bring back a river, albeit in another country, but it has been done. So it just reflects political will there, and that's something that never ceases to amaze me. But on the other point, I think what's crucial in this tour that we'll be experiencing is we'll have a chance to actually demonstrate how we are layering in how this river corridor could evolve with the type of work that speaks to land use patterns, the changing of zoning designations, understanding the potential we have as property owners, as a city property landlord. And so what we do with that transformation, I think, is up to, again, this concerted effort. So looking forward to that meeting as well.
And the last thing is just an editorial. My wife and I went and saw Touch the Water at the Bowtie property on Saturday night. Some of our friends were in it, Mr. Lewis McAdams and Joe Lenton, among others, and very entertaining play about the possibilities of the Los Angeles River and the revitalization. And so very enjoyable. Sitting outside next to the river, it's just a great setting for anybody who hasn't seen it.
Did anyone videotape it?
No,
Maybe in anyone's
it's
YouTube or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's against the Actors Guild. But,
Okay. Oops. All
yeah,
right.
yeah. But
Okay.
the councilman wasn't recommending that. He was just asking.
I was wondering.
Yeah. And that's it for my report. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I do want to thank Larry Sue and Carol Armstrong for their continuous hard work. And you have a great crew there, Mr. Moore. So thank you again for your spirit and your leadership there.
Thanks.
Okay, Planning Department. And we'll be getting a couple of reports from the Planning Department. One on the monthly status of the Rio and the we now call the CASP, and another hopefully on the high-speed rail planning analysis. Good afternoon.
We're going to do this in two parts. Good afternoon, Claire Bowen from City Planning, and actually I'm going to let my colleague here, Deborah, start our talk.
Good afternoon, Councilman. Deborah Kane with the Planning Department. Wanted to give you an update on the status of the LA Rio and Rio Ordinances. Again, these are two ordinances that establish, one, the implementing ordinance to adopt a district around a water body to create special requirements, standards, and guidelines for properties developing within these boundaries. And of course, the first being for the Los Angeles River along the 32-mile corridor that it's in the city boundaries. Going back to February, the City Planning Commission adopted this on February 12th unanimously. It moved forward here, actually, to a joint Plum ad hoc meeting on March 23rd, where it was again unanimously approved. And on April 8th, the City Council referred the two ordinances to the City Attorney for form and legality review, where it is still today. And the next step would then be taking these two ordinances forward to the City Council later this summer for consideration. In the meantime, the River Unit in the Planning Department has been meeting with advocacy groups along the Bayona Creek watershed as well as the Arroyo Seco. We've also been involved with the Pacoima Wash, Pacoima Beautiful specifically, and their efforts on moving forward with a plan along their waterways.
And the Cornfield Arroyo Seco specific plan, I think as we mentioned last time, is currently updating or doing the environmental impact report. We are still planning to have that report available for the public by fall, which is really exciting. Also, we are currently preparing the application for the lead neighborhood development. You may recall that the project is participating in the pilot, and we are one of the only large government entities participating in that pilot, which I think is really important in terms of helping shape the LEED ND program in the future. So we're going to have that application into the United States Green Building Council by early this summer, which will be really exciting in terms of that step. We also met recently, Deborah and I did, with some groups up around the Warner Center area. They're actually considering expanding the boundaries of that specific plan to actually come up to the river on the south bank, which we think would be really wonderful in terms of helping make that connection. So again, trying to use a lot of different efforts we have ongoing to help fulfill the goals of the master plan. And then just lastly, before we get onto the high-speed rail, just wanted to share with folks something that actually our Bureau of Engineering colleagues have been working on is the Recedar River Loop, and I just happened to receive some postcards the other day from the Mujeres de la Tierra and Trust for Public Land who are working on that, and those workshops are coming up in actually just next week, or June 27th is the first one, but there's a bunch back there. Folks are interested. It's the opportunity to put a new park at the Aliso Wash and the LA River. So again, another opportunity to help improve the river.
Now, when in your meetings with folks from different parts of the city, can you just mention one or two items that are of concern when you are meeting with these groups, when you're discussing the Rio, or you mentioned Bayona Week?
Sure. There hasn't actually been concern that I've encountered over the two ordinances. In fact, we've been hearing interest in creating Rio specific, for example, for the Arroyo Seco, perhaps for the Pacoima Wash. So the interest is actually in taking what we are proposing and expanding it to other districts throughout the city.
So we can duplicate what we're trying to achieve.
Yes, and the beauty in the way that the Rio has been designed is it enables us to create very specific boundaries and create different guidelines and a checklist, or we can design it however we want, which enables us to take consideration of site-specific circumstances.
Great. Well, I guess I got used to hearing more negative stuff. So it's good to hear positives. That's great. That's good. They want to duplicate this. Fantastic. All right.
So I think we're going to move on to the high-speed rail
Please.
presentation now.
Good afternoon, Councilman. Nick Marisich from City Planning, and Kevin Keller is joining us as well to guide us through the PowerPoint presentation that we prepared.
Okay, before you start, is anybody here from the High Speed Rail Authority? Not that we're going to single you out. Just want to make sure if we have any questions, we could engage each other. But no, okay. Thank you.
So we're here today to provide you with a status update of the project that the state is working on and its relationship to the city's existing land use plans. Basically, a short overview. Why is the state pursuing such a project? To meet the growing demand for travel throughout the regions of the state and alleviate capacity constraints on highways and at airports, support goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and in support with partial funding from the voter-approved ballot measure last November. We're also looking at what can high-speed rail do for Los Angeles. Definitely an opportunity to enhance downtown Los Angeles as the main hub of the region's transit system, and help the city to reduce automobile dependency, link with local transit systems, and improve development potential in areas surrounding the station site.
So will there be any other stops in Los Angeles other than the one in Union Station?
Yes, the Rail Authority is setting a potential station stop at Sylmar.
That's somewhere. Okay.
And we're continuing to meet with them, with some of our Valley planning staff, to find out more about that in the weeks to come.
Interesting. So whose council office is that? Is that Councilman Alarcon?
Yes.
Okay.
So here you see a system map. It's an 800-plus mile system traveling to connect the regions of the state. There's 5 segments being studied along the initial operating route from Anaheim to Los Angeles to San Francisco. And the 2 routes that are within the city of Los Angeles boundaries are the LA to Anaheim segment and the LA to Palmdale segment. The state is in the middle of the planning process where they've completed an alternatives analysis for the LA to Anaheim segment, as well as the downtown LA up to the 134 freeway portion of the LA to Palmdale segment. They are proceeding into an environmental review and expect to have a draft EIS, EIR at the end of this year, beginning of next year. The LA to Anaheim segment is shown here. It's an estimated 20-minute travel time from LA to Anaheim with a maximum speed of 125 miles per hour. Next.
Now, in the portions of the Los Angeles, what they are covered within the EIR, have they spoken to anybody in the planning department as far as how their alternatives are impacting communities?
Yes, and we have had several meetings with the High-Speed Rail Authority staff to get more detailed information about where the high-speed rail is proposed to travel through the city, and give them access to all of the city's existing land use plans so that they can help them to identify land use impacts for them to study in the environmental phase. We also have had representatives from the Department of Transportation there as well.
Will the respective council members have the ability to get their constituencies ready to understand what the alternatives mean?
We have definitely been providing the Rail Authority staff with key stakeholders in the communities that we work with to make sure that they're doing, they're connecting with the right folks to get local input. And
has the link been established with the council members of these respective areas?
I believe we've been coordinating with the council offices and the departments, and we understand that the Rail Authority has been doing that as well.
Okay, all right. I just want to minimize surprises. That's all.
The state has been considering 2 station location options in downtown Los Angeles: the existing Union Station, as well as a station along the west bank of the LA River at the city's existing Piper Technical Facility. You can see those 2 station options shown on the map. South of Union Station, the alignment enters the city limits at the existing Hobart Yard facility. It crosses over the LA River just south of the Olympic Boulevard Bridge, and from there travels along the west bank of the river under the existing bridges up through 4th Street Bridge. Although the high-speed rail alignment is on existing rail tracks, we are looking for opportunities to increase river access through this corridor as a part of this project, and are continuing to give our feedback to the High-Speed Rail Authority staff. This aerial map you see now is shaded with existing land uses, and you can see the LA River running along the top of the map from left to right. The 2 station options have different land use implications through this area. The alignment that would connect with a West Bank station, if Kevin can scroll through, this is the West Bank station, would run along the river's western edge at grade and then gradually become trenched under the 101 freeway and continue out to the north in a relatively straight alignment. The alignment that would connect to Union Station would leave the edge of the river just south of the 1st Street Bridge and cross over an aerial structure to enter Union Station above the existing rail tracks. The West Bank option has 2 rather significant...
If I just ask you a question.
Yeah.
Either way, the train has to slow down to stop.
Correct.
So they can allow for these curves and these turns.
Yes. They apparently every train that's proposed to operate on the system will stop in Los Angeles.
Right. So when we look at your comments and your feedback to them, can we get a copy of what is actually being stated?
Yes, we're working to prepare a written report back to the council that can summarize our input to date and of course, we'll be continuing to participate as the environmental phase proceeds.
Okay.
There's the Piper Technical Center and the Metro Regional Rebuild Center, which are directly in the path of the West Bank Station alignment. And for these reasons, the just released alternatives analysis report from the state recommended that this option not be carried forward into the EIS-EIR phase. The Union Station option threads tightly between a number of significant land uses, including the One Santa Fe development, the city's personnel building, the Nishi Hongwaji Buddhist temple, and a large maintenance facility owned by the Department of Water and Power. The deep tunnel option at Union Station was also studied, but it was recommended to be not continued into the EIS-EIR study due to a number of related factors such as a very high cost, lack of an empty site to dig out and cover over, and the existing tunnels and structures which exist in the area. The state's alternatives analysis has recommended to continue studying the potential environmental impacts of the aerial alignment to Union Station. The city's departments will continue to work with the state to identify any associated impacts, and in response to city and community involvement, the state has already tightened the curve through this area to minimize land use impacts.
So what if the city wanted that other site considered? We have the ability to do that, right?
We have given them considerable input about these two options and the various pros and cons from the planning department's perspective. There seem to be some insurmountable obstacles when it comes to those two large facilities on the edge of the river, and the rail authority has communicated to us that they see very little support from the city, from the other departments and agencies. Metro, which has the facility to the upper left, there does not seem to be enough support for continuing that option. And
How can they say that if
Right.
I thought we were the city family?
Right.
When they're telling us what our own city family is saying, and yet we're just getting the notes on your report. I mean, who are they talking to?
Right. And Kevin Keller, City Planning, I think one of the difficulties is that we're responding, and I think you mentioned outreach. This is not a city planning project. We have received a number of requests for outreach. We simply refer those requests with our saying that we think this is important to the High-Speed Rail Authority. They're doing their own outreach, and obviously there may be a lot of concern about some of these alignments. We're looking from a city point of view at this. In terms of the issue, we have looked at pros and cons of all the sites. We've met with the different council offices, and I think we're looking for some direction on how to respond to this. What Nick is reporting is that the report that just came out in just a number of weeks ago
last week
by the state has essentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, essentially crossed off the Piper Tech location site as being a legitimate one moving forward. Obviously, the city has a number of issues. We can write letters. We can give general feedback. I think we're looking to have a technical staff level meeting after this meeting to follow up with that. But we're continuing to just analyze from a land use perspective all of the impacts. So that was one of the things we are studying, I think, at the request of your office.
I think it's very crucial that we have our concerns on the record.
Mm-hmm.
We need to write what we see and what we feel about our concerns, and that has to be written down in one form or another. We can't allow these windows to close and we kind of like, oh, shucks, we missed it. If it's happening now, and the EIR and the EIS process is already moving as fast as it is, I mean, we just got the new MTA executive director, Mr. Leahy. We have community plans in progress, I'm assuming, in these areas. I mean, that's the assertion. We do have real concerns with how we're dealing with our transit-oriented district and our historic pockets that this thing is going to run through. And we have a small thing called the River Master Plan. So, there's these converging concerns that we need to have written down somewhere if we're going to protect ourselves as a city. And I don't want to be an obstructionist. I think we need this. But we shouldn't just be run over in a manner that doesn't reflect these concerns. So do you have a timeline of that they are following?
That's good feedback for us to hear. I think officially their draft EAR has not been released. That's when we have an official chance to comment. We have had this series of staff level meetings with them at the request of the motion that was before us. I think following up, and perhaps we're happy to do that, either follow up with a meeting or perhaps even issue a written letter saying, hey, we might feel that it's important to continue to study both alternatives. I think as we'll get through our presentation, I think staff initially, I think, shared a lot of concern. There does seem to be that the modifications to their alignment, I think, have begun to address a number of concerns about how the tracks would come in. Aside from the technical engineering concerns, we're not engineers, but in terms of what you would hit coming into the station from the south and also leaving from the north, because it makes a difference on where the station is located.
Well, that's one of my.
And we've been able to kind of help shape that curve a little bit, but I think you raise a good point that as far as the city's concerned, although there are, Piper Tech is a very large building. I want to put that out there, but in terms of a true alternative, it does have a lot of, aside from the building itself, which is important, and we've all been there, the straight alignment does eliminate a lot of those concerns about taking some property, perhaps, or maybe not even taking property, but having tracks adjacent to very significant properties. So I think that's good feedback for us to hear.
And the best case scenarios should be our ultimate goal. Set aside the dollars, this notion of feasibility, that to me is secondary at this stage of the process.
Okay.
Right now should be, what do we have to do to embrace this facility in a way in which it doesn't preclude us from fulfilling some of the scenarios in the River Master Plan, while taking care of the historic elements, while looking at the whole notion of local versus regional congestion and getting people in and out of this facility. And all of these are layered issues that someone in this city has to find a way to focus on, and we'll get there. But just for the record, I don't think we should just take the fact that they dismiss the alternative like that. Who are they talking to? I'd like to know who in the city department said it's okay not to consider us. I'd like to know who's saying that.
Right.
I don't think anyone has
No.
said that we've had conversations with them and said we just found out when that alternative analysis was released that they were making that recommendation. I think that's part of the purpose of our formal report, is to then formally respond on the part of the city to require them to have that analysis.
But if I heard correctly, it sounded to me like if they made the statement that it's okay to eliminate this alternative because the city departments, how did you phrase that? That there was a reference to?
They've communicated to us that the various city departments have raised concerns about the obstacles of relocating Piper Tech, and from Metro's perspective of the Regional Rebuild Center, which they're investing in expansion right now.
I like to see the minutes of that meeting. I like to know who's saying what.
Right.
The respective chair of that committee should be informed of what the city department of their committee is stating, and there should be a strong focus as to why we are posturing ourselves that way. We are literally letting go strong leveraging positions here. So again, it's just a matter of how we look out for ourselves as a city. And
We can definitely try to get that information and report back.
And Kevin Keller, City Planning. I think it's been a series of informal meetings, and that's part of the issue, is how do we coordinate? So I think it's just good for us to hear. I think one thing we can take back, and I do want to make sure we can continue at least finish the analysis we've done have.
I'll get off
but I think we want to continue
soapbox
and continue with both alternatives to maximize the options available to the city moving forward.
Okay.
And I think reporting back to either this venue or whatever venue you feel is appropriate would be a great way to make sure we're all on the same page, because it is a very big project. It's moving on many different tracks, and I think it's important for us to coordinate on that. So
appreciate that.
that's
Go
good
ahead.
for us to have some
I'll stay quiet for right now. All right.
I'll try to wrap up here.
Okay.
Claire's going to take over in just a second. This is a rendering that the High Speed Rail Authority has produced of what an aerial station concept could look like at Union Station. There's been some concerns expressed from the city, from city planning and other departments over the capacity constraints of Union Station. And the state has done some modeling of options for expanding capacity. They are not proposing to expand capacity, but they've done some modeling to show that it is possible, such as, for example, a new drop-off and parking facility that could be located south of the 101 freeway as one scenario. What they have been telling us is that the state is planning and building the tracks and platforms, but they are not planning or building any station facilities at any stations along the route. Station development is something that individual cities and transit agencies will either need to develop on their own or work with the developer to create. Some examples that they've given us are the Arctic Station in Anaheim and the Transbay Terminal in San Francisco. These are separate, locally driven projects and are something that the City of LA should definitely consider undertaking as well for Union Station or wherever the ultimate station location is in downtown. As I mentioned before, the Alameda District specific plan, I don't know if I mentioned it, was up on the screen, that already has entitled a large amount of development at and around Union Station, and a large portion of that development has yet to be built. So a key component of the specific plan there is that it's flexible. It allows the development to be moved around within the boundaries of the specific plan, and that's something we may want to look at into the future in terms of future development of Union Station and the areas surrounding it.
All right.
And north of the Union Station, west side of the river area, we have the alignment all the way up to the 134 freeway, or roughly to the freeway State Route 2, which is near the city's border with Glendale. And I'm going to have Claire just touch on some of those options that they're considering north of the Union Station area.
Okay. There's another slide I think you want to go to. There are actually, and these are the two alternatives that we're going to discuss right now, are both assuming that, this is all that's in the alternative analysis right now, is this assumes that the station is at Union Station. They have two other alternatives as if it stayed at Piper Tech, but those are again not in the alternative analysis. So again, if we are going to push for the Piper Tech one, we're going to need to push for them to also put those other options back in. But assuming it is at Union Station, they're proposing two alternatives. One goes aerial out of Union Station and then continues. That one's not on here.
It's just the
We're going to go to the next. Can you go to the next? Great. We can just leave both of them up.
I think I can choose one or the other. I'll come back.
Okay. Let's do the one on the aerial one first. So this one goes aerial, then down Main Street, and then stays on the west bank. It does go into a trench there through the. She doesn't go into a trench until it crosses over, and this is an alignment we are not certainly in favor of, because we think it has a tremendous impact, obviously, on some of the goals of the Cornfield Arroyo Seco specific plan in terms of connectivity. We think an aerial alignment, down Main Street would be very disruptive to the community. And actually, Kevin, if you can go back to the other slide, then the other alternative they're proposing is coming out of Union Station, staying aerial, and then once it crosses the river, again going down into a trench on the east bank. And one of the benefits of this, as it's currently been explained to us by the High Speed Rail Authority, is that they were proposing to consolidate all the tracks that are currently on the east bank into this trench, and perhaps even taking the Metrolink that's on the west bank onto the east side and putting that also in a trench. So that would really maximize the opportunity to have connectivity to the river, especially once it's in a trench. They are able to cover that trench, not for the full extent of the trench area, but through portions of it. So again, that would enable them to cross over that trench area and then get down to the river. And then if trains are no longer on the west bank, then again, that would free up access, to the river.
Let me just. Isn't this too obvious?
Mm-hmm.
This big rail yard here.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing around it. No housing, no commercial, no businesses.
It is in the 100-year floodplain.
100. I mean, they don't see that.
Well, I think that it is one of the alternatives, not they're formally studying, but has been
What's
informally.
What's that known as? That's the piggyback yard, right?
Is it
Right,
Mission
Mission Yards.
Mission Yard.
Right.
Mission yards.
Right.
I mean, don't most big cities as big as LA have two rail stations?
We have been certainly when we've been looking at the different options, we've kind of done some pros and cons on that, and those will be part of our report. If Nick, if you want to elaborate in terms of, there are pros and there are cons to it. I mean, if you start to have something that's so far away from Union Station in terms of really, promoting connectivity, it could also be used as
Be a great facilitator for our local circulator.
Right.
For the transit-dependent people in the area.
I think this is Kevin Keller, again, City Planning. I think you've hit on the three. When the city departments got together with DOT, Metro, on some meetings, initially there were basically three items that jumped out. One is the Union Station location. One would be the Piper Tech location, for lack of, I guess, the West Bank location. And the third which we did prepare, again, the initial pros and cons list internally, was this Mission Yard location. From a planning point of view, certainly we understand our Metro colleagues, there may be a long-term benefit towards acquiring the site. From a planning point of view, one of the planning responses to this one, although we'd love to get feedback, is also the idea of getting the train almost there, which we seem to have done a few times. For various reasons. And the concern was, how would you link a lot of these passengers who basically whisked in to basically have that station right be in the center of town? Now, there could be ways to do that, but you would be disembarking the train on the east side of the river and not have direct connections, though there could be connections, not have direct connections to our existing transit infrastructure and walkable connections to, Chinatown, the Pueblo, and downtown. So it is across the river. There could be transformative land use opportunities there. But I think what we had initially studied, and I think maybe it's time for us to respond, were these three. I think from a land use perspective, and that's the department here in front of you today, there were some issues with the east of the river side in terms of connectivity of those patrons, but certainly in terms of having a large available parcel that could really have a lot of circulation attempts in there, it's certainly something that could be looked at. So we're happy to take that back as well. We have that research.
That would be
We
great.
include that in our final written report.
That would be great. I mean, at least at this stage of the process, to have everything on the table so that we can back into this.
Right.
Maybe we leverage other dollars that deals with, floodplains, water treatment, local shuttle systems. The densities here are over the top. Our transit-dependent issues here are very high. Our mixed-use, transit-oriented districts in this area are several. They all almost overlap. I mean, to me, it's just like, here I am, look at me, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we should, allow for that. At least give ourselves a chance, now that we're at this stage.
I think we can include that in our written report. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think that was, we had one more slide there following these two alignments north of the 101 freeway. But this slide shows you all of the alignments in the vicinity of downtown Los Angeles that the High-Speed Rail Authority has presented in their alternatives analysis report. And we are going to continue to work with other departments, the council offices, and the state to identify various community impacts, communicate the city's land use policies to the state on this, and we would love to report back to, as Kevin said, whichever committee you feel is appropriate later this summer to submit our formal comments.
Till the end of summer or the beginning? Did you say?
Later this summer.
Later this summer. We don't know when exactly. Okay. All right. I think this is one of those, if we're not careful, we could miss an opportunity. And when they start construction, we're going to say, well, we didn't know. One of the dynamics that I'm hoping we can get a handle on is when you speak of the aerial, what kind of structures are we talking about? Are they 5-6 stories high? Are they 10 stories high? Are they going to be like what we see down the Harbor Freeway as you're going by USC and you catch the flyover? Are we talking about monumental pillars like that?
The state's told us they're about 65 feet high and about 50 feet wide.
But we can look into that more and try to prepare the details on that.
65 feet high and 50 feet wide. Wow.
I think what we should probably do is look at some existing tracks and bring those back to you as examples with our DOT people. But I think that's something we need to continue working on to get that information to you.
I mean, that's startling. In terms of noise, I understand in other countries when that bullet train is flying, just the takeoff point and the emerging there's like a real loud swooshing sound that can practically pull you in because of the speed of the train. Do they speak to those issues?
It's definitely a concern of ours, something that we've raised with them, and we're going to continue to get those answers.
But they haven't responded?
They have. I don't think we have detailed information on what those noise impacts would be at this point.
No, they haven't given us that information.
Okay.
Again, the EIR is not out yet, but I think based on this, I think we need to follow up with the High-Speed Rail Authority and give them a written breakdown of information that the city is looking for. And I think that includes details on the tracks, exactly how high are they, the size, show us an example of how that works, the speed of trains exiting and entering the station alignment. I would imagine, based on how curvy it is or how straight it is, that makes a difference there. And then also just, the points of interest along that, because the one thing I think the planning department wants to state is that we are not doing the public outreach for this. There are alignments that could hit sites of varying importance or ownership. A lot of the sites are owned by public entities. Some of them may be owned by private entities. That's the state's control, but that's something the city might want to be evaluating as it looks at options.
In the formalities of a environmental impact report, are they considered the lead agency?
Yes.
And what's the city's status in that relationship?
The city normally would comment on the draft DIR and receive a written response. And I think developing this kind of staff level analysis now, I think one thing you've hit is that the state is limiting the options of alternatives that will be studied. And so the most recent submittal or release, basically, I think as we reported, just reading it, we sifted through the documents, took off the Piper Tech West Bank alignment as an option. So I think one of the things that you may want to have us do sooner rather than later is draft, with some input from other departments, a written response to that, to request that perhaps that, from what we're hearing, maybe that be kept on, or at least some explanation, or have some more background of why that decision was made and why it's not going forward on the draft.
And just the last point, at times we find ourselves in a place where, because the city of Los Angeles is so big, other entities might see us as a giant bowl of smog with a bunch of folks who are running back and forth with no real sense of quality or taste or anything else. We got that treatment when the Gold Line was being built, because certain cities did have the capacity to put more money into their leg of the rail line. They added more, let's say, appealing features that mitigated the presence of that infrastructure. I would hope that we don't get canceled out because we are so big and people probably think we don't care, that we get a facility and structures that aren't taken away from our opportunity to become better. So how they treat the bedroom communities in between San Diego and here, just the whole environmental justice issue of how we get treated is something that's in my radar, only because it's happened before, and we've had to be diligent about how, certain parts of the city get treated. So it'll be curious to see how those designs and that treatment evolves. And it's just something to put in the radar. Mm-hmm. It's not like we don't have enough to do, right? It's really good. I appreciate this report, and I'm glad that there is this level of analysis. Anything else you want to add?
I think that's it, and we can certainly coordinate with your staff and get on the calendar again.
Okay, we'll look forward to that. And I am keeping the Congress members informed, and the state senators, and especially those that are impacted in our corridor. So we're making sure that we keep them informed as well. So these reports will help facilitate that. So I recommend that we don't file the written reports, and that planning department return with a final written report on the impact of the high-speed rail.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Well, that was very insightful. Next item?
Item number 3 is a BOE report relative to short and long-term recommendations to address safety, liability, and water quality concerns and related matters associated with the Los Angeles River.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Councilman Reyes. Carol Armstrong with the LA River Project Office in the Bureau of Engineering.
Good afternoon, Ms. Armstrong.
Before you have the LA River Access and Uses Report that went out for public review for a period of 30 days. During the drafting of the report, we consulted with a variety of different individuals and organizations. And during the public review period, we received formal comments from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the County of Los Angeles, California State Parks, the City Project, and Central City East Association, and those are attached to the report. What we found is that there's general support and enthusiasm for expanded river access and use. The concerns tend to be about the oversight and the maintenance of these activities moving forward. Everybody wants to make sure that if we do move forward in expanding the access and use of the river, that we do have enough people down there with their eyes on the river and that it's a safe place to be. So To that end, we've crafted the recommendations within the report to make sure that we do move forward with that institutionalization and that capacity building that's necessary for us to identify specifically what the monetary resources would be, the personnel, the equipment, and those kind of things. And so the recommendations are to move forward with 5 priority recommendations, and those would be to the LAPD, Rec and Parks, the Department of Water and Power, CLA, and the City Attorney's Office. And then we have an additional 7 for you to consider. That would be led by DOT, the Bureau of Engineering, City Planning, CRA, and then a blanket one for all departments and agencies to coordinate with us as we move forward on plan implementation, and then another one for water and power.
So they know that we're going to be using that Conan feature as the before, right?
Right.
And after we get it all coordinated, we'll have an after.
Yes.
Okay, great.
That's the idea.
I think you know what I'm talking about. But well, thank you for that. And again, no, we need your stewardship, and I applaud you for your visionary efforts. Gary's, yourself, and the whole team. You guys have been doing great work. So getting people to believe is not easy, and getting to act is just as hard. But I'd like to recommend that we expand the 5 priority recommendations to the first 7 recommendations listed, and to make sure we address the original intent of the motion. And I'd like to instruct my staff to start scheduling reports for the first group of 7 for September 09. So that way gives the departments time to regroup, understand the priorities that we're setting here with these recommendations. And second, recommend to council that we note and file the motion and report, and instruct city departments to begin reporting back at the September committee meeting. That'll be action of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Armstrong. Okay, our next item.
BOE report relative to proposed revisions to the project management plan for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Los Angeles River Ecosystem Restoration Feasibility Study.
Okay. As I'm going through, I didn't see any public comment cards, so that's why I'm not asking for public comments. So there's none. Okay, good. Okay, go ahead. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Councilman Reyes. This is Larry Shute from the LA River Project Office, Bureau of Engineering. And
Daryl Buxton with the Army Corps of Engineers.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir.
this report is a response to direction given at the March 23rd committee meeting to report for a specific strategy for finalizing the Army Corps and or Arbor study, and number 2, to recommend a local demonstration project. So I'll first start with the core study. The original core study PMP, Project Management Plan, was established in April 2006. Total study cost at that time was $7.35 million. The city's 50% share was comprised of in-kind services for $3.4 million and a cash contribution to the Corps for $275,000. So the status to date is that the city, the bulk of the LA River Revitalization Master Plan effort was considered a portion of the in-kind study, and the value credited for that is $3.4 million, and we have not contributed any cash to that to the Corps to date. The Corps has completed milestones F1 through F3. They have 9 milestones for the feasibility phase at a cost of approximately $1.8 million to date, which is about half of their original budget.
Right.
We decided sometime last year that the original budget wouldn't be sufficient to finish the study in the original scope, and it's for a number of reasons, but the majority of the primary reason is probably because the study was never funded fully each year. It was funded about 50% of the requested amount each year, and there were additional technical requirements being imposed by the Corps headquarters on all studies, and so that adds cost. And there were other unplanned, less impacting factors. In the city, we also, as we were discussing the scope of the study, we decided to change from looking at just 4 disparate nodes, we've talked about this a few times, to looking at a reach of the river, currently from Verdugo Wash down to downtown. And we feel that we will derive benefits that are more consistent with the Corps' mission and have a better chance at future federal funding if we change the scope.
But it also complements existing work that's already occurring in the valley around the watershed issues up there, correct? With Sepulveda Basin and all the other outreaches throughout the corridor.
Well, yes, there's opportunity to remove a portion of some of the nodes in the valley because we could find other funding through the CAP process. Right. And have that work done outside the study.
Right.
So
right.
So currently, for many months now, we've been meeting very regularly with the Corps management and our management, and we don't have a finalized budget yet, but we're getting closer. The total study budget right now is $9.7 million. The city's 50% share would include an additional $130,000 in cash contribution to the Corps. And so our recommendations in our report are consistent with that, move that forward. First recommendation is to approve the revised study area, the arbor, we're calling it, the alternatives with restoration benefits and opportunities for revitalization. Authorize the city engineer to negotiate up to $9.7 million total study cost.
So I'm going to just slow you down for a second there.
Sure.
Arbor is alternative with restoration benefits and opportunity for revitalization, right?
Yeah, it's this is not really the alternative, but I guess it's the arbor area we've been calling it.
Right, but I just want to make sure everyone understand what the arbor is.
Yeah.
Because, it's a good test question. No, just kidding. Go ahead.
Hard. I had to write it down. I think Cheryl's the only one that
So did I, believe me.
And number 3, direct the CAO to identify the cash contribution of $130,000 to meet the 50% city share.
Right.
I just have one clarification, sir. Darrell Buxton again. It's not an additional $130,000. It's replacing the $275,000 that was previously identified in the agreement. So that $275 is now $130.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Now, as far as the worded demonstration project, the National Water Resource Development Act 2007 authorized $25 million for LA River demonstration projects. A demonstration project is intended to pilot or test a concept and inform a study, and we've been supporting an initial appropriation of $5 million for the development of a project, which would, if we appropriated that much, a 35% match would be $2.7 million in local match. So total study cost, total project cost would be $7.7 million.
Okay.
We have developed some ideas for demonstration project internally. However, we want to provide an opportunity to gain ideas of others and provide an opportunity for public comment and discussion. So we're proposing to hold 2 workshops in late July to do just that.
And that's more connected to recommendation number 4, correct?
Recommendation number 5.
5, okay.
Yeah. And that's it. That's it for the report.
Okay. So, anything else, sir? Army Corps?
Just to parrot what Larry mentioned, is we have worked a lot. We've met many times trying to reduce the cost and looked at it every way that I think we know how, and have come up with this absolute kind of bottom line dollar as far as what we can do. We've even we've assumed that this is going to be a 2-year completion time. There's no contingency in that plan, so it's very dependent on getting the funding as needed for the next 2 years,
right,
to finish in that time frame.
And again, from my vantage point, we're going to be pushing just as hard and going back to Washington as much as aggressively as we need to get the funding that this deserves. We keep talking about job ready. I mean, we can start creating jobs tomorrow if we have the funding, because I think these sites are ready to go, and so it's a matter of again going back to that political will and making that happen. So, God willing, the next 4 years, that's all we're going to be doing is pounding away on doors and getting the money in here to make this happen. So that being said, I'd like to recommend that we approve the recommendations that you made on the record. I think on to identify, I have here looking at identifying that project. If we can hold that back so we can get more public input. So that way we have that. That would be item number 4. I think that would be critical. So we can just hold off on item 4 and let's solicit more input on the demonstration project. And that way we have more chance to speak with our colleagues and the stakeholders and be more focused that way. I'd like to instruct the BOE to submit a timeline with milestones within 60 days, report back with a core on a quarterly basis, and that we note and file this motion. And again, thank you for your hard work. Again, this is the kind of traction people don't notice, but it's what gets us moving forward. So thank you for keeping us in that direction.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you, sir. Item number 5.
Your last item, Chairman, DWP report in response to motion Garcetti raised relative to DWP's policies and procedures for maintaining transmission line right-of-ways along the river.
Good afternoon, Councilman. My name is Eduardo Malacon, and I am with Los Angeles Department of Water and Power.
Good afternoon, sir.
To report the quarterly report maintenance along the river, Lake River. Last time we came here, we report that we were going to decrease the number of days that we do maintenance from 180 days to 45 days, and we started on April 22, 2009. To 45 days from that date, we're going to go back, and I think this week I share with our maintenance crew, and this week they're going to go back to the river area to maintain, remove weed, graffiti, and everything for the property that we own in fee.
Is there a way to share that information, perhaps through a website or some report that we have access to so we know physically what you're doing and the timing of that?
We could use the website to put down the reports on a regular basis.
If you were to do that, what that will do for us, and then right here I'm kind of brainstorming here, but we have the Alley River Keepers, and they're doing work on the corridor as well. So I'd hate to not be opportunistic and leverage the areas that are being cleaned, because what if one day Alley River Keepers go in, they clean up a corridor, then your crew comes out and says, well, this doesn't need it, we don't have to do it. When maybe you can focus on another area that the River Keepers have not done. And so how we leverage our resources, I think, is critical there. So we can get us a report or some way to work with my staff so that way we are in tune with each other, not stepping over each other on that kind of effort.
We will do that.
Okay.
Also, during that time when we wait to do the maintenance, we also, if we receive complaints or something like that, we go to the area and clean it. Other problems that they may be with trash or things like that. I am with power system now, water system.
Yeah, on the water side, just to let you know, we have pretty limited amount of property compared to the power system. The big one is the Tyborn pipe crossing. Comes across the river, and it's a suspended pipeline. It was tagged, repeatedly gets a lot of graffiti on it. We did a big paint job on it last year. Cost us a little over $70,000 to do the repainting on that pipeline. Obviously, it's been tagged again. We're going to go out trying to set up a internal contract on that. It'll cost us roughly $8,000.
Are there any preventive measures you can do so you have to keep?
We tried. What we did do last time is we've got last time the entire pipe was tagged, and what we did last time is we have gates that prevent people from actually crawling out on the pipe, circled with concertina wire, razor wire. What we did notice this time is that somebody, where there's a will, there's a way, and somebody figured out, I think they could throw some material over the concertina wire and yank it down. So we're going to be addressing that. We're going to try and improve that, make it a little more challenging. and then we'll be painting the areas closer there weren't too many people who actually made it over that device that we had set up. So there's a few minor things out in the middle of the pipe, but for the most part, it's near where it comes into the shoreline, and so we'll be addressing that, be able to maintain that a little bit.
What's the function of the pipe again? What's it?
Basically, it's a water line, provides potable water service. So it's able. We have a few crossings on the LA River, but most of them are underneath the LA River.
Gotcha.
This particular one is actually suspended by cables.
And this is in Councilman Garcia's district, or?
It's in the Atwater area.
Okay. Okay. We should get creative with that.
We're trying. It's tough. It's a challenge. If you have any good ideas, let us know. It'd be great.
With the longest spiky.
Said maybe we could grease the pipe. Maybe we could. I don't know. Who knows? Give the guys a little something before they get out all the way in the middle of the pipe. I don't know. Who knows?
What insect would be the most relevant that has spiky stuff on it? So it'll be a nice artistic piece.
Exactly.
While preventing it from being tagged. I mean, do something creative like that.
No, that would be neat.
Because some kind of a growing vine that has a lot of spikes on it.
That's true too.
But something that can lend to the artistic end of that thing. And
that's a good point, actually.
Because it can blend in, or an educational piece with a bunch of art on it that has to do with insects that have a lot of spikes on them. It's going to hurt when you get on that thing. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right, no problem. But that's pretty much it for us in terms of the water side.
Okay. And I do want to thank Councilman Garcetti for his motion, because I think his response to his constituents and dealing with these ongoing maintenance issues is very real. So your response, and as real as you can be, goes a long way in terms of the commitment in transforming this riverway. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Great.
Anything else?
That's pretty much it. Thank you, Councilman.
Okay, James, you want to come on up? Thank you very much. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Council Member. Jim Yanata, Assistant Director of Water Resources, DWP. Just want to give a brief update on the WISER Committee. We first met April 21st.
That's a great acronym.
WISER. It represents Watershed Infiltration for Supply and Environmental Restoration, and you could thank Carol for that one.
So you're all the wise people.
Wiser.
The wise guy.
Maybe that means we were.
Okay. I got to get to the wisest.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, what we did is we're trying to establish some common goals between the Department of Water and Power and the Department of Public Works. We came up with improving coordination between the agencies and departments on water supply, water recycling, recharge, and river revitalization issues, reducing peak flows in the LA River, evaluate use of city property along the LA River to promote water recharge, water recycling, and environmental enhancements, and incorporate job outreach in projects and programs. We are recommending that other agencies and city departments to be included in the WISER Committee, such as BOS, Planning, Rec and Parks, the Mayor's Office, LA River Ad Hoc Committee, LA County, Army Corps of Engineers, and potentially others. Action items at this point is preparing a spreadsheet of all projects within the LA River watershed fitting the criteria of a WISER project, and BOE to make initial contact with the Mountains Recreation and Conservation Authority.
Correct.
And we're meeting 10 days from today for our second meeting.
Fantastic. The magnet that you hold and how you pull in other departments is amazing. Because one, if we understand in a much more clear fashion your main objectives as the facility that you are in dealing with water issues and everything that deals with water and power, the departments, I believe, will have a stronger sense of how they can complement that objective while meeting the goals of the river plan. So the more we understand how we can complement your goals, I think the more will get done. I mean, like this water pipeline, I mean, it sounds obscure or whatever, but it makes a big difference to people that live in that area. Yeah. And how that's being treated and how that's being maintained is a significant statement. And hopefully we'll be wiser in our approach to how we work with each department. So that's something that I'm looking forward to. And the fact that you have that capacity to pull in folks where you do, because you actually implement, it's what we got to do every day, makes a big difference. We're looking forward to working with you on that. So from that point of view, we can note and file the reports that have been submitted and instruct the Department of Water Power to report back on a quarterly basis on projects, policies, and maintenance issues that impact the LA River. And I know we're sharing business cards. We know who to talk to, how to talk to each other. So I appreciate that effort. And there are no public comments on this item as well. Anything else, James, you want to add?
Well, I wanted to thank Carol and her staff for BOE. She and I are co-chairs on this committee, and I think we'll be very successful. So we're working to move the other departments in with us.
And if my schedule permits, I'd love to join you in one of those meetings. I remember the first meeting we had with all the different departments when we started talking about the LA River. We had it in one of the committee rooms. We had almost every department there, and the response was just, it was so reassuring to know that there are people in the city family who do want to see something change for the city, and the river as that vehicle. And the feedback we got was tremendous. That was 7 years ago. And to see it evolve to this point is truly a strong reflection of the leadership that we see here with Carol, Larry, and yourself. And I appreciate that hard work. And I'd like to visit one of your meetings to see how it's working and all that good stuff. Okay. But that being said, anyone else here for public comment? Seeing none? Thank you very much for your patience and your participation. Have a great day.
Thank you.
This meeting is adjourned.
Hey, Ralph.